Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm delighted to participate in this debate, and I want to extend my thanks and congratulations to the honourable member for Thornbury and Yates for bringing this debate forward. Like so many across this chamber, like so many across the world, I too am deeply concerned about the declining population of our elephants. We know that the UK Government has committed to a ban on ivory post-1947, but action so far, as has been pointed out, has been thin on the ground. We know this debate today is the result of a Parliament petition with over 107,000 signatures calling for a shutdown of the domestic ivory market in the UK. And that petition is indicative of the strength of feeling about the barbaric practices fuelled by the ivory trade. Lots of warm words have been spoken on reducing the ivory trade, and we know that in 2015 the US and Chinese presidents pledged to enact near-complete bans on the import and export of ivory, and I sincerely hope that the progress made in the US is not reversed under the new regime. China also has committed to gradually stopping the process and sales of ivory for commercial purposes by the end of 2017. And this is believed to be extremely significant since China buys 70% of the world's ivory products, according to experts. However, the slaughter continues in horrifying numbers, and it's hard to see in that context how these beautiful creatures which are being destroyed can sustain themselves as a species with this barbarity going on. Ivory dealers employ armed poachers who in turn target entire herds of elephants, shooting them with automatic weapons and hacking off their tusks with axes and chainsaws. These tusks are fed into the illegal international ivory trade, which is controlled by highly organised criminal syndicates. And this trade feeds demand for ivory products in Asia, Europe, the USA and elsewhere, and in itself continues to bankroll the continued destruction of elephants. The ivory trade has a history that is too long and too bloody. National Geographic uncovered in its investigations that elephant ivory is now a key source of funding for armed groups in Central Africa, like the Lord's Resistance Army. National Geographic commissioned the creation of artificial tusks with hidden GPS trackers that were planted in the smuggling supply chain, starting in the Central African Republic, then averaging 16 miles a day, crossing the border into South Sudan. Ivory can raise tenfold in price as it moves through the supply chain. For a pound of ivory, middlemen in the bush pay poachers anywhere from $66 to $397. As tusks reach Asian markets, their values skyrocket and is used as carving in art and jewellery. The savannah elephant has declined by 30% between 2007 and 2014, largely due to poaching. 144,000 elephants have been lost, around 96 each day. Even in protected areas like parks, a huge number of carcasses are reported. Embattled park rangers are often the only defence for wildlife and villagers. Increasingly, park rangers speak of being there not just to protect the land and animals, but increasingly to protect the people who live around the park. Worryingly, studies have shown that more than 90% of ivory in large shipments seized between 2002 and 2014 came from elephants who died less than 3 years before. And this demonstrates that it's not taking very long at all for illegal ivory to make it to the marketplace, testifying to the fact that there are clearly large networks for moving ivory across Africa and out of the continent. What we need to stop this horrific practice is international cooperation. We need it as soon as possible if elephants are to survive as a species, and that is how urgent this matter has become. All countries around the world need to introduce a complete ban on international and domestic ivory trade. The UK Government, as has been said, has pledged this in its manifesto, but it has not so far taken action. But I want to take issue, Madam Chair, with some of the things that have been said today that I have found, and I'm sure anybody listening to this will have found actually bewildering, if not chilling. To suggest that a ban on ivory puts us on the same page as the religious fundamentalists who destroyed Palmyra is not only absurd, but a little bit hysterical. And the member for South Antrim said that we should that this was the case. And he talked, and I have to say I found it quite distressing. He talked about antiques, trinkets with pretty gold tops. Well, whilst religious fundamentalists destroyed Palmyra deliberately, a ban on ivory does not and will not destroy trinkets or important historical pieces. Banning trade in ivory does not mean that we lose our history. It means that we remove the conditions in which ivory trade thrives, and therefore continues. The honourable member for Kensington, and I pay tribute to the fact that she's appeared today to speak so well with suffering from a malady, but she spoke of the beautiful historical ivory objects in our churches and museums. But I am still not convinced that banning trade in ivory threatens the beauty of these products or the intrinsic historical value that they hold. And it seems, from the answer that she gave me, that if historical artefacts cannot be valued in pounds, shillings and pence, then they seem, in the eyes of the world, to have no value at all, which I find extremely depressing. I believe passionately that as long as you have an ivory trade of any kind, you will have a continued illegal ivory trade. We've already heard about the difficulties and the costs that exist when you're trying to date the age of an ivory product, and it's extremely difficult to do, and the cost is prohibitive. If I can just address my remarks to the honourable member who spent most of the debate trying to get an answer to a specific question about the relationship between a total ban on internationally on ivory trade and poaching. What I would say to that honourable gentleman is a total ban internationally, if we can come to that agreement, makes ivory much more difficult to sell. And the more difficult it is to sell, the fewer buyers you will have, and that will reduce the price of the ivory because there's nowhere to sell it to. We need to push for a total ban. Time is running out. The United Kingdom could do something good here. It could lead in this battle. It could use its international influence. And I urge the Minister today to tell us what plans she has in that direction.